Okay, everybody, welcome along. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you cannot hear me, well, if you can't hear me, there's no point in me saying please write in the chat box, but hopefully Carl will keep an eye on the chat box, and if anybody's putting up messages that they can't be heard or that they can't hear me. I've muted everybody's microphone. I'm really sorry to do that. I feel like I'm gagging you, but I'm really sorry. But I just will unmute the microphones at the end if anybody wants to have a bit of a discussion going, but at the moment, just to keep the flow of things going, I'm just going to leave it off. Throughout this presentation, if you want to ask a question or anything like that, I'll stop at various points along the way, but please use the chat window. Even if something comes up while I'm in full flow, please just write into the chat box what you want to ask your question about, because I'll stop very regularly and take questions. Some of the content here is some of the content I would have presented on the AAC day, but I just wanted to expand on it a little bit. And also to let you see the apps, because unfortunately we couldn't project the screen when we're over in Microsoft, so people couldn't see what I was talking about. So we're going to kick off. Hopefully my screen looks okay to everybody. I'm just looking at Carl, just to make sure everybody's seeing it okay. Yeah. I'm just going to run it in the kind of edit mode, if that's all right, because otherwise if I start clicking on things to go between PowerPoint and iPad, it gets a little bit confusing. So welcome along, everybody. I know there's a few people who can't be with us today, and we'll be watching this as it's recorded. And hopefully we'll get something out of it as well. Just to, as I say, go through today, I'm just going to go through some of the theory, a little bit of theory behind iPad apps and how you can help choose the right one for the person that you're working with, and also then kind of some of the apps out there, particularly those for iPad, because that's where the majority of the apps are, but I will be mentioning some available for Android and for Windows as well. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is choosing an app, and this is where people kind of find it difficult sometimes to narrow down what they want to do with an app, figure out which is the one that's going to work for the person that they're working with. There's a few app evaluation tools out there. These are the three most commonly used ones. Each of them has different levels of detail involved in them. For example, Jessica Gozel's one from the Boston Children's Hospital is kind of a very straightforward tick box one, whereas Carl Zangari's, I'm pronouncing that right hopefully, it's quite a complex rubrics. You have lots of tick boxes, lots of kind of cross-referencing and all the rest. There is a link there which hopefully is showing up on your screen for the Spectronics and Oz web blog, and they have a really good review of all three of those, plus one or two more minor ones that are available out there if anybody wants to look at them. However, there is an application, it's a web application, it's not an app per se, it's a web application that will do some of the work for you. It's the AAC Apps Assistant, which is from AAC Tech Connect. Now there is a price on that, but you can get I think it's a 30-day or 15-day free trial, and they'll also give you a kind of a printable sample that you can take a look at. And it goes through and asks you all the questions like what are you looking for from the app? Does it need to be symbol-based, text-based? You know, what sort of voice output do you need it to have? Does it need to be recorded speech or synthetic computerized speech? All those questions will help narrow down your choices by doing that. So those are things that can help you. There's also, sorry I don't have it up there, AAC Evaluation Genie, which is another app that is purchasable. I think it's around 12-13 euros, and it's quite a nice one that will help guide you around what features you need to have in place. It doesn't tell you which app to go for afterwards, but it helps you figure out how many buttons on the screen can the person cope with, what sort of pictures they need, text size, things like that. So it's an evaluation genie. I say it's about 13 euros thereabouts, so it's an interesting one. I say it doesn't tell you which app in the end, but it can help guide you towards those conversations. Most of these apps, what they do is they look at matching the AAC user what they need, their needs, their areas of strength and their areas of weakness, and map it across to a system. So for example, for an AACs, you look at sensory motor components for them, the cognitive components and the environmental components, and figuring out under those headings what you need for that person, what suits them. Then you go away and you look at your AAC system, figuring out what of them works or has features that match for your person, so hopefully it should work for them. So again, you're looking under sensory motor components, cognitive components and environmental components. So things like feedback, what cognitive level they need to actually operate it. Do you need to look at expanding it? So if you're buying it for somebody who whose communication is going to change over time. So for example, a child growing, or maybe it's an adult who's just had an acute incident and over time may develop more skills as they recover, things like that. And then the operational side of things, the operation, literally turning it on, off, is that suitable for the client? I've had a client in the past that I was looking at an Android tablet for, but where the button to turn on the Android tablet was just beyond her reach. So while she could access the screen, actually reaching to the top of the screen to hit the on-off button was actually beyond her, so that actually ruled out that tablet for her. Things like programming it, is it easy for other people to take up and program? Is there going to be a lot of ongoing programming or not? Durability, and you often find this with iPads, they're not the most durable device by themselves. Screens crack, they fall, everything like that, so you might need to look at additional add-ons such as cases or padding or mounting it, all these little bits and pieces as well. But basically, all these things come back to what that we gave you back in week 1. And rather than having to go through all those ones I mentioned in the first slide, they can help because they can give you topics and headings and stuff like that. You can create your own. You don't need to go down that route. Once you know what's needed for the person, you go off and do your research, figure out what app is going to work for that particular person. So going back to what we had before. Okay, I'm just going to change something here. Okay, hopefully people might see that a little bit better. The classification of an AAC device. We looked at this before. I'm not going to go back into it in much detail, but this is the sort of thing that can inform your decision making, what you need to have in place for that particular person in order for them to use, whether it's a low-tech system, paper-based system, whether it's a traditional AAC device, or if it's something on a iPad or other tablet, iPod, Android, Windows, whatever the case may be. So these are the things that can help you narrow down your choices. Once you figure out what works for that individual person, you can look at doing things like this. So choosing a high-tech device, what output is needed? Basically, do they need recorded speech if they're going to be only purely working on symbols with a pre-recorded vocabulary? Do they need a synthesized speech engine so that if they're typing, even if they're typing in just a couple of words, that they're going to be pronounced properly? For example, I was working with somebody in Cork recently, and they have a very old Dynamo communication device which is years old. And while he had a keyboard screen on it, if he typed in something like BUS, it did not put it together to say bus. It just said BUS. So it actually hampered his communication. So for him, he'd outgrown that system. He needed something new, and he's an ongoing case for me at the moment, trying to find something that will work for them. How complex it needs to be. Do they need a lot of vocabulary in there? Do they need the ability to be able to type in unique utterances? And that kind of is informed by what type of communicator they are, what stage they're at. Emerging communicators would be people who are using it in kind of very supported environments. Context is given to them. There might be somebody facilitating them. So for example, they mightn't be changing pages and going to different sections by themselves. It might be that somebody's facilitating them and opening it on the topic or on the vocabulary that they need. Context-dependent communicators can work really, really well and appear very independent once they're in a context that works for them, that they're familiar with. However, if you take them out of that context, it may not work so much anymore for them. True independent communicators can cope with any environment, with anybody they're chatting to, no matter what. So that would be the aim for a lot of people, getting to that point where they're independent communicators. But often physical access or cognitive or sensory reasons may mean that they don't get quite that far, but it's up to us to facilitate to get them as far as they can. Accessing the aid as well is a big issue, and this is one of the things about the iPad. iPads are really useful to be able to access via touch, fantastic touch screen, very little pressure needed there. However, there's very little you can do to change the sensitivity of the screen. Some apps give you some little bits and pieces around that you can kind of only, like, it takes a longer hold to select the icon, but that's due to individual apps. It's not on the iPad fully itself yet. Switch access is getting much better on the iPad. We've looked at that in sessions, and it can work really well for those clients who need switches. Some apps will still have their own switching element within it, so they can do things like row column scans and things like that within the app and kind of change up the switch pattern to suit the individual person. Unfortunately, things like joystick, head mouse, eye gaze are not available for the iPad at the moment, and the big issue behind that is there's no cursor on screen to control. There is research going into that end of things, so hopefully in the next couple of years we might have opportunities to have mouse emulation there. And also how to integrate this with other needs, and I'll be doing a presentation next Tuesday on this, on integrating between different communication devices. One of the advantages of the traditional AAC devices is that they were AAC software on a Windows-based platform that also had environmental controls included. Most apps, there is exceptions, but most apps don't allow that much flexibility within the one app. So you're looking at different apps. So you have to come out of your communication app to go into your environmental control app, for example, or come out of the environmental control app to go to your email program. So traditional devices still have a strength in that area, I think, but apps are catching up. So apps at the moment, in general, there's 1.3 million apps on the Android store. That's more than there is on iOS. However, the quality of apps on iOS is much better. There's lots of apps out there that aren't AAC based, so hence the 1.3 is not saying there's that many AAC apps out there. Windows is severely lagging behind. Hopefully it'll catch up as things go on. There's 300 Windows apps out there at the moment, but you'll see towards the end of the presentation there's only 3 or 4 AAC apps out there. Prices can vary from things that are free, and I'll be pointing out a couple of free or low-cost apps today that may suit the person as their main communication application, but also might be good for evaluation purposes. So before somebody goes and forks out €200 for an app, maybe trying out a free one. First of all, we'll check some of the things around access or being able to see icons on the screen, kind of those issues there that that may hamper them accessing a more expensive one. One of the other issues is there's no trial version of iOS apps. And you sometimes have to look for light versions, and light versions can be all well and good by themselves, but often they have limited features, or you can only have 1 or 2 screens, or there's some limitation there. For example, I'm going to show you an app later on that I can show you the layout of it, but because I've got the light version of it, I can't show you it with picture symbols or with a voice output. So I can get an idea of what the app is like, but I don't fully know how it works. So I'll show you that one a little bit later on. Just some precautions around apps, and this is apps in general, not just AAC apps. Sometimes apps are just developed for one person, one end user in mind, and it might work brilliantly for that one user, but it may not be applicable to other users. So that's something to keep in mind, that just because it's on the App Store doesn't mean it's a fantastic app. You need to critically evaluate it. Some of the apps out there, they're designed with limited knowledge of child language development. A lot of apps, I can't remember the exact statistics, something like 50% of apps out there are, the ones with pre-programmed vocabulary, are actually in a semantic category based layout, and that's actually shown to not facilitate communication at all. Apps that are in kind of topic-based communication or scene-based communication or pragmatic organisation actually facilitate communication much better than those that are just simply done by category. So for example, putting all your action words together, all your food words together, all your clothes words together, that does not facilitate communication because you're going in and out of pages the whole time. However, if you have a dressing page where you have the verbs and the nouns, so for example, I wear, I wash, I like, I want, and the sentence completers, the nouns, jumper, skirt, whatever else, that does facilitate communication. Topic-based pages do actually facilitate communication much better. Certain apps, you can't edit them, or you can't customize them, or you can't customize them on the iPad itself. You need to go back to software on your computer in order to edit them. Some apps are only downloadable in certain countries, and it's a bit of an annoying thing. Some of the great blogs out there are American or Australian, and they list all these apps, and you're thinking, oh fantastic, that one sounds brilliant, but when I go to look for it in the Irish iTunes store, it's not there. So you have to watch out for that. It's just check that it's available to you. Some apps are subscription-based, that you have to pay a certain amount each year to be able to continue to edit them. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. We've got a couple of people who've downloaded an app and did all their editing in the first place. So these people who are using maybe keyboard-based apps and can spell, that they only have to pay for the first month or the first year subscription, and then because it's set up the way they want it, they don't have to subscribe anymore. But for a lot of our children, particularly children, but our adults as well, their language, their vocabulary is developing over time, so it's not suitable for them unless you continue to pay that subscription. Not all apps have a message window, and that's really important for those context-dependent and independent communicators, that they can start putting together messages independently. Voice quality can vary, and it can vary hugely, to be quite honest, the quality of the voice and the quality of the symbols included as well. Some of them have really nice pictures, some of them are using established symbol systems such as PCS, the picture communication symbols and things like that, but then other ones just using a small vocabulary range that they've pulled together themselves, or just photographs that they've included themselves. So just watch out for those things. So there's some apps in this, they've received good reviews, so hence I'm showing you them here. It's not an exhaustive list. If you've come across apps yourself that you found fantastic that aren't in my presentation, please do let me know about them. I'm just going to go through some of them now. I'm going to pause here for a second. If anybody has any questions about anything I've said so far, you might just throw them up in the chat window. I'm kind of curious, do people find it hard to choose an app? Is there what do you think the barriers are to choosing an app for use with your clients? Is there something that comes to mind that's the biggest barrier? Is it time to research? Is it knowing what's out there? Is it unsure about access methods to iPads? So I'm kind of curious if you want to post up anything in the text box. And I suddenly feel like I'm on QVC waiting for somebody to bring in. Sorry, I'm just looking back here. Sorry, the PowerPoint. Sorry, sometimes the camera goes behind the PowerPoint for me, so you might be able to see. Hopefully you can see me now. But just sometimes if the PowerPoint comes to the front, the camera on me disappears. Just seeing your message there, Rachel, find it difficult sometimes due to budgetary restrictions in our own equipment. And that's one of the big things, being able to purchase all these apps to see what they do, what features they have. It's a big difficulty, unfortunately, and this is where I think apps aren't as strong as traditional devices. A lot of the traditional devices, we could contact the supplier or the manufacturer and get a 2-week loan and try it out in the various different environments. Whereas with apps, we don't have that same luxury. We have to purchase them outright in order to get all the features. The light versions, as I was saying, are useful, but you mightn't get everything you need in order to be able to evaluate it correctly. So it's a big issue, yes. And Siobhan's making the point there that families often know more than we do because they've had the time to go off and research. Very much so, and I think this is one of the challenging thing for people working with people with disabilities is that we're no longer the gatekeepers to information or technology. Parents and end users themselves have had the time to go off and research, and they often come to you with a solution in mind. And often it's very hard to know what feedback you should be giving there and then. And this is something I've come across. If somebody rocks into a session kind of going, here's my iPad, I've got this app, make it work. And I'm kind of going, okay, I don't know this app. I need to figure out how settings work, what's the features, things like that. And sometimes I think we have to be honest that there are, I can't remember, something, I think around 700 AAC apps on the iTunes store. I do not know them all. I will not claim to know them all. And sometimes you just need to say, hold on a sec, I just need to look this up, or I just need to do a little bit of research around this. Sometimes you're firefighting in that somebody's already spent the money, and hence you've got to maybe adapt something that isn't ideal to that person's profile to them. And that's a difficult thing to do, is to do that part of it. There's been once or twice when I've had to say, no, this just won't work, we need to look at something else. And that's a difficult conversation to have because the parents often have self-funded this and then having to say, oops, no, you went the wrong direction there. And kind of that's where your education part comes in. Talk to the parents or to the service user themselves and kind of say, look, this is why, and go back to that feature match rubric that we had at the beginning, why this isn't working because it doesn't allow switch access or it doesn't have the vocabulary level you need, and do that with them. And I think that can really inform them and help them with the education side of things. Yeah, Celine, sometimes you need to use the app yourself before you can recommend it, and I fully agree. And as I was saying, we don't often always have the opportunity to do that. So hence downloading free versions is a really good idea. Keep an eye on, there's a website called Free App Fridays. And I'm trying to think, there's another one as well, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'll just post it up in the forum afterwards. These are sites that list when an app goes free for a short while, so you sometimes can nab it either free or at a low cost price, so you don't have to pay out the full version. However, I know things move slowly, so sometimes you see an app and it's half price and you start off the process of applying through your line manager to get permission to buy it at that price, and then suddenly it's gone and you don't have the opportunity to buy it. It is a very big challenge. Chandra was saying there about using the right words to get the right app. Look at a couple of the resources I mentioned there at the beginning, because they'll give you the vocabulary, the features that would most commonly be used to help define what that person's needs. Rachel's saying they have a couple of iPads but don't have the facility for loaning them, so we often recommend AAC devices or iPads with apps that the child or adult is only used in a few SLT sessions. That's a big thing. Not being able to loan them out. I suppose we're in a lucky position here that we can loan them out and give people an opportunity to try, but maybe that's something you need to go back to your organisation and talk with them about, that, if iPads are assessment devices, that the person needs the opportunity to try them out in various different situations, that hopefully they can get coverage by your organisation to take them off site or give them to them for longer periods of time rather than just maybe the SLT session that they have. Brenda, I would say it's lack of time and knowledge. The app assistant, yeah, try that one out. I've only my own iPad, so it's my time and money. Yeah, and sometimes getting the buy-in of organisations to purchase one for assessment purposes. And one of the things we found is sometimes it's shared across departments, so it might be shared between speech and OT, so both services, both disciplines get, to use it for different purposes with their individual clients, so it's one to look into as well. Mary's saying, not acknowledged yet in my service, so hence my interest in the course. Yep. And hopefully you can take some of the information you're hearing here back to your line manager and make the case for having AAC devices as well out there. Rachel has come back with, it's difficult sometimes to explain to parents or staff that tablets don't work for everybody. And I think using those rubrics, as using the device feature matching tool, can help with that explanation, pointing out, this is what your child or this is what you need. And unfortunately, this tablet, this app does not allow you to do that, or has restrictions in that area. Mary's gone down the road of apps without researching, and then they lie dormant. Yeah, we're all guilty of that, I have to say. I've got 1,000,001 apps on my iPad that I downloaded because they were free or they looked interesting, and then they just sit there and there's no end user for them in mind. We're just live and learn. Anthony's given us some non-legal advice, I see here. There's an app called Upcharge, which is a peer-to-peer app sharing app. Might be a good way to source apps that you can't find or are looking for a trial before purchasing. I won't comment on that because I'm not sure what it is, but if that's something that people want to discuss, maybe we can take it to the forum. Yep, and some people have already expressed interest there, so great. Okay, I'm just going to continue on, and we're just going to go looking at some of the apps, and some of these now I would have mentioned in the session before. Sorry, now I'm just going to try and bring up my iPad on screen. Bear with me for 1 second. Oops. Yeah. Cool. Am I okay bringing it to the side of the screen like that? Okay, I'll bring it back into the centre and try and remember what's on the slide behind it while I'm talking. Just going to go through some of the single message apps. For anybody who's used traditional devices, you've probably come across things like Big Macs, which are basically very simple recorders. They record one message on it, and it's a very nice introduction to communication. A single message can be recorded at a time. It can be maybe something about their news. It could be a line for play. It could be morning prayer if you're in a religious setting. Lots of different ways you can use it. There's a good few apps out there that emulate this. For example, one of the best ones out there is one called Tap Speak Button. And the reason that's one of the best one out there is, and hopefully you can see it on the slide behind, is because you can put a picture on the app, on the button on screen, so the person knows what the message is going to be around. So this is important in the longer term when they start having 2 or 3 choices about what they can say, that they know which message they're selecting. I don't have that one here, but I'm just going to show you a different one. It's called the I Speak button. And this one isn't great, but it's a cheap one, hence I have it on here. And as you can see, it gives a verbal label, but it doesn't give me a picture label, which would be very important for people who are non-literate. And simply you just record in one message. Sorry, that was my voice, but it was recorded earlier. Single message device, so it's like the Big Macs. Big Macs cost about 120, 130 euros, I think. So if you already have an iPad, this is quite a nice little option to have those kind of things. Other apps out there will allow you to have sequence of messages. So for example, one-sided of a conversation is what we call social scripts. It's a very scripted conversation. So for example, knock-knock jokes or interview questions, and somebody else might be the recorder for the answers to the questions, things like that. So those are kind of single message devices. Some of them, this one, you have a very tiny button down the bottom right-hand side of the iPad screen in order to go into editing mode. Some of them will have, if you put them into landscape mode, you'll have the editing features down along the side, but if you put it back up into portrait mode, those disappear, so the end user doesn't see all that or cannot access all that and just has the single function of playing a message. Next one I'm going to go through here is, again, for those people who are emergent communicators or are starting to come into the context-dependent side of things. Just to give you an idea of that, I'm going to talk about scene display apps. And these are apps that you can take a photograph of a scene, or so it could be, for example, the example I brought up on screen there now is an art activity. And you can see it's just a photograph taken, but you can see there's hot spots all over the screen. So those blue areas means that there's a message behind that. So for example, if I touch the middle child there, so it's giving you a message behind that. This is kind of a commenting app, but you could have different scenes in there. For example, let's see if I can bring up a different scene. You can kind of see it's bringing up hotspots around the menus at the top. So you can choose about what you want. And then you can see down here at the bottom of the screen there's also kind of a menu bar with a few extra items that you might want to say as well. So these are scene-based ones, so they're very context-dependent. Some apps will allow you to, for example, if you chose this one's not set up, if you chose the containers there at the front of the screen, might go into another scene with a photograph of just the containers there, so you could choose your cheese, tomato, onion, whatever the case may be. So those are scene-based devices. There are some really good ones out there, for example, Seen and Heard. Oh, sure, go back. Seen and Heard is a really nice one, and it's often used for communication, but there's also a really nice reason why other people use it is, as you can see there towards the bottom of the list of features, you can schedule a scene to launch at a specific time. So for example, if you're using it with a child at 9 a.m, it could open up into a scene about circle time if they're in preschool, so they can do all their good morning hellos and things like that. For maybe an adult who's got maybe dementia or something like that, it can launch a scene that will guide them through maybe locking up their house at night. Have you checked the door? Have you checked the windows? Have you turned on the alarm? Have you done all those little bits and pieces we have to do before we go to buy the cat? Do all those little particular bits and pieces that you need to do before you go to bed. So Seen and Heard is a really nice app. You can see there it's using widget symbols, which are the ones that are on the bottom of the screen. Sorry, 1 second. So these symbols down here are widget literacy symbols. So they're one kind of pre-made vocabulary of picture symbols. So that's why the price is pushed up a little bit, because they're third-party ones. The app designer has to purchase those. There's other ones out there, sorry, keep clicking on the wrong thing. Scene Speak, for example, is a cheaper version. However, you can't link or have pre-recorded and have it set time to come up. Other apps that can be used in kind of topic-based displays are ones like the Go Talk Now. That actually combines kind of the grid style vocabulary displays with visual scenes as well, so you can get the best of both worlds for this one. It goes up to 25 buttons per page. However, there is no keyboard or anything like that there, so it's really designed for those children who are very much dependent on symbols to communicate. You can throw in videos, which is quite nice. If it's more of a Go Talk Now is not just a communication aid, it can be used as a learning tool as well. So you can have videos in there. So for example, if you're teaching the person about a routine, for example, making a sandwich or doing that lock up the house at night kind of thing, you can have videos to guide them through each step. There is switch access to that one as well. You can use your own symbols, or you can use widget literacy symbols and symbol sticks if you have a license for them. There's a few other apps out there. These are selected ones. I just wanted to just point out one or two, and so let me go back in here. Oh, sorry, bring up. Yes, sorry. I was going to show you this one. It's called Snappy Capture. It's not your typical AAC device, but there's a few of these. There's Snappy Cat Pirate Chat, Snappy Cat, I'm trying to remember the other ones, Halloween Chat. And they're very much kind of context-based communication devices. But the reason I love it is because it is allowing the person access to lots of different vocabulary around the same thing. So for example, if I go into the stop mode, which is the cat down here with the hand up the top, it's given me lots of ways of saying stop or back off or don't want to do this anymore. And some of them are quite funny. If something's very positive, or sorry, if you want to say hello to somebody, you can go through lots of different things there, for example. So it's very kind of appropriate chat. Might not be your traditional device, and it doesn't have vocabulary around every single situation you might come into, but I think for social chat this one can be quite nice. I often take ideas from this app to put into other apps or into other software, so you can kind of see it's quite a nice one just to know about. So apps then that might allow you to start moving away from whole message buttons. Whole message buttons are devices that have the entire message behind one button. That's good for those emergent communicators, but for those people who are moving on towards more context dependent, I mentioned this earlier on, having your topic board around getting dressed and things like that, you could have a sentence starter there, for example, I want, and then having your sentence completers, skirt, jumper, jacket, whatever the case may be. So start building up. And in that case, you might need to be able to link between pages. So for example, you might choose I want, but then you might need to go and find a color, for example, my blue, then come back to your page on dressing to find jumper. Things like that. So a few apps out there that do this. These ones have recorded speech, so it's recording your own voice into it. One of the ones I really like is the one down there at the bottom called Sounding Board. The reason I like this, A, it's free, and if you've not learned nothing else from this course, you know I like free stuff. You can have between 1 and 9 locations on screen, so you can have just one big button there, or you could have up to 9 different buttons on screen. And it's also switch accessible, so it means it's nice all-rounder for assessment purposes, and for maybe for some people it might become their system. Just going to show you that. And I'm just going to show you a page that I set up earlier on. This is me just messing around with it. So for example, I have my food page there. Once I go into it, it's giving me options around food. I programmed these as whole message buttons in this case, but I could have programmed them as sentence starters. And you can see there it's linking between pages. So it's linking between pages, so it gives the person independence. They can find the topic that they want to communicate about and make their way there and get the vocabulary that they need. Some other apps out there, Widget Go is a really nice app. It's from the people who do the widget literacy symbols. There is a free version of that, or a light version of that you can download and try it out and see what it's like. One of the ones I'm waiting for, I really want to see myself, is Clicker Communicator. That's due to be launched sometime soon. Clicker Communicator is from the people who do Clicker 6 and the Clicker apps. So they have a huge amount of research behind them. It's a company that's got put a lot of effort into researching literacy and things like that. There's a screenshot down there at the bottom of the screen, so you can kind of see that it has lots of pictures there that you can start putting together your sentence. So this is what I'm talking about. no longer being whole message buttons. You have your symbol for I, and then you can choose your verb, and then choose your outcome as well. So I don't know pricing on that. I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere around 70, 80 euros, but hopefully it'll be out soon, so one to watch for. Any questions on the apps I've talked about so far? Because I've just talked about apps that are suitable for people who are non-literate, so either due to age, for example, young children, or lack of access to literacy support, or lacking the cognitive ability to understand literacy. I don't know if anybody has any questions around anything I've talked about so far before I go on to the next section. Even for people who are fully literate, I sometimes have buttons there with whole messages behind them. As I was saying, for emergency messages such as I need to use the bathroom, can you get the nurse for me? Having questions like that, giving access to whole messages like that, that somebody can access it very quickly, and without having to put it together individually word by word or by typing it in. So having access to things like that can be really useful, still having whole message buttons, even though they might have moved on to constructing their own sentences or started typing. Okay, I'm just going to go on to apps that would have both symbols and the ability to write as well. These tend to start getting to the more expensive range because you're starting to look at synthesized speech here, which means the creator of the app has to buy in a speech engine. Some of them buy in low quality speech engines, so hence you get very bad voices that don't sound the nicest, whereas if they have bought in a good quality voice, that's often reflected in the price they need to charge at the end of the day. Some have word prediction in there as well, and they often have kind of that different, some of them come pre-programmed, so they have different language levels, so you don't have to do all the programming yourself. You have a little bit there to start with. Some of them will have multiple kind of users that you can choose from, so you might start off with a very basic user and then gradually come up and up to more complex users as the person's ability increases. For example, I'm just going to show you one there called Avez. This is the one I made a reference to back at the beginning of the session, that I've only got the light version of it, but it only gives me kind of labels on the buttons rather than pictures as well. Sorry, just trying to spot it here now and I can't find it. Nice, there we go. So this, for example, it is supposed to be symbol-based, but you can see in this free version, you can really look at the top of the screen there, it says not subscribed to symbols and voice, because I've only got the free version. So it gives me some pictures in some of the pages, just to give me an idea of what it could look like. So this is the Symbol Sticks picture library there. So you can get an idea of what the layout might look like. This is what I'm saying. Sometimes trial versions can give you an idea of what apps or what features are there that might help you choose for the person. I don't have voice output in this, but you can kind of see up on the top of the screen it's going into the message window. I also don't particularly like the way the sun pops out after you describe things. So I'm going into my things. And there I'd have my full message that I could speak out if I had the full version of it. So you can kind of see how the language level is becoming more complex here. You're asking more of the end user. It's going to maybe satisfy more communication needs as well, rather than just being based on what the person needs, having pre-programmed pages. Apps out there that get quite expensive in this range include Proloco2Go, which is one of the more popular apps out there. It's been around for about 4 years now at this stage. It came out very shortly after the iPad was launched, and hence a lot of people came into clinics with this already purchased, and this is one of the big ones that I've had an issue with. It may not be suitable for the person, so we've often had to severely edit the pages, take it back levels and all the rest, trying to get it suitable for the individual user. Talk Tablet and Touch Tablet, they're quite robust apps as well. Talk tablet is actually a really nice one, very similar in levels to Protocol to Go, but as you can see it's about half the price there. Touch Chat, you can get a light version of it for about €80, but the full version, which uses the word power page sets, can come in at up to €240, so it's something to bear in mind that they are quite pricey. Chatable, an app that's been launched in the last probably 6 to 9 months, and it's a really nice one, I think, in that it combines a lot of nice features from different levels. So you have grids, you have scenes, and you can have keyboards. So it's something that will expand with the individual as they change over time. So you could have maybe a single grid initially, single button grid initially, you can start going into scenes, and then you can build up to grids, and then as their literacy maybe comes on, you could have a keyboard in there as well. This one, as I say, a lot of apps are just about communication. This one gives a little bit more flexibility. You can do things like accessing social media, Skype, open videos, things like that as well. Model Talker we talked about briefly during the day. It's where you can record in your voice and create a voice bank for yourself, or take somebody who's of a similar demographic to yourself, i.e. age, sex, geographic region, and create a voice for yourself as well. Just to show you Chatable. It launches, yeah. This is one of the apps that was actually designed with a speech and language therapist, so you can kind of see that in the outcome of it. So for example, here you have your grid display. If I go into colors, for example, I'm getting into a scene, and that's a very simple scene. I don't have a keyboard page set up on this one here. I can't get into the keyboard through here, but you can have a keyboard there as well. In the longer term, they're actually looking to link it to environmental controls as well, that you could be able to control, if you're on the same Wi-Fi network as external devices, you can control them through the app as well. So this one's kind of starting to become more like the traditional AAC devices that we've seen in the past. Just other apps there that use both symbols and text. Dynabox Compass, it's not one I've used. It's based on the traditional Dynabox software. It is subscription based as well. I can't remember the price of it off the top of my head, but one of the nice things about it is the fact that you can have touch enter or touch exit as your access method. So it can either accept the first icon your finger lands on, so for somebody with good motor control that can be a really nice one, but touch exit for those who don't have as much control, they might get their hand or their finger to the screen of the device and use that to stabilize themselves, and then they can kind of skate their hand to the icon that they want, and where they release from is the one that's selected. So that touch exit is a really nice feature, I think, and it's one of the few apps that I've come across with something like that. Oh, Mary's, I think, looked it up there. It's $100 per year or $20 per month. Thank you very much, Mary. Grid Player, as you probably noticed over the last couple of days in session in Microsoft, you know I love the grid. I think it's a very useful piece of software, very flexible. However, the app version is not as good at all. You can't edit on the iPad, so you need the full version. It can be for direct access only. You can't use switches or anything like that. However, I've got a few people who use communication devices with the grid who have a modified grid set available to them on their own iPad as a backup. So for example, if they want to go out and they're just going to the cinema or going out to dinner, that they have a lighter version of their grid sets and keep that on the iPad so they don't have to bring a bigger, bulkier device with them. LAMP is, for those of you who might be working with an autistic spectrum population, LAMP is a really, stands for Language Acquisition Through Motor Planning. So the idea that you don't learn words or don't learn vocabulary items per se, but you learn motor patterns. So if you choose a certain sequence of buttons, that it will speak out to the person you're communicating with. But for you, it's not about that. It's about learning the motor plan for achieving that end goal. So for example, choosing 2 symbols to request a drink, for example. Just moving on then to apps that are text-based. These are ones designed for people with good literacy. It doesn't necessarily mean excellent literacy or that they need to have excellent spelling ability, but they have enough there that they can communicate quite effectively through it. Word prediction in some of the apps, so you're all familiar with this from your mobile phones. You start typing the first couple of letters and the app guesses which words might be that you're trying to use. Some have phrase prediction as well, so for example if you start typing with the word how, it will predict the next word, like are, much, many, words like that. Some of them also have the ability to save messages, so you can pre-plan maybe speeches or something you need to say, or if you know something is something you're going to be using again and again, that you have the ability there. Just to give you a few ideas of these, one of my favourite ones, again, free, is clarocalm, which is coming from the people from the Literacy Day. You heard about Clara Reid. I'm just going to go into clarocalm here. Reasons I like this one is that I can use the on-screen keyboard. As you can see, I've got word prediction up here, but you can also see it's using phrase prediction as well, and it's kind of giving me the most common phrases I might want to say. So for example, if I was in a shop, go back. Sorry, starting again. I'd like, so if I start typing in newspaper, sorry, I had news there. Oh, sorry. Hit the wrong thing there. Sorry, I should have been hitting please. And I can put my message together that way. So that's using the word prediction there. It also has a really nice feature, if I bring down the keyboard, of having pre-stored phrases. And the phrases here are arranged by category. So for example, if I go into the coffee shop one, it's got phrases here about things you might say in a coffee shop. You can edit these. You can see on the there's a little edit screen there, so you can add in new ones or take out old ones. But I like the fact that they have this little feature where they have a blank in a sentence. So for example, can I order a, and it asks me what do I want to put in there, so I can put in. So rather than having to write out the whole sentence each time, you know, I might be a fickle person, I mightn't have a usual order, I can just choose that one and add in new ones each time. As you can see over here on the left hand side, there's a lot of vocabulary items already stored. So for example, wheelchair, there's ones there that might help a person explain to a technician what's wrong with their chair. For example, could you adjust and you just have to put in that last word, footrest, tray, whatever the case may be. So it's a really nice app. It gives a lot of possibilities there. You can also add your own categories. You can add things into your favorites category if it's something you say a lot, but it also holds things in its history. So for example, if you said something recently that you need to repeat, it's there ready and waiting for you. So you can see the last 2 sentences I did are at the top of that list there. And as I say, that's the free version. There is a paid for version as well that costs, I think, about €13, and you can get different voices with those as well. So if you don't particularly like that voice, you can choose a different voice. Verbally is another one that I really like. It's again, there's a free version and a paid for version, and it gives you a lot of vocabulary on the one screen. So you have your pre-programmed phrases up here, pre-programmed words up here. If you have the full version, you can have a phrases tab, and you can add to that if you've got the full version. You have your keyboard down at the bottom of the screen, but you can also have the ability to have word prediction over here on the right hand side. It's quite a nice one, I'd say, for a free one. As an evaluation app, it's really nice. The only thing is some of the locations on the screen are quite small, so you need quite good fine motor ability to be able to access that one. Other apps out there you might have come across are Protocol for Text, which is by the people who did Protocol Protocol to Go. Sorry, I got my app names mixed up. A lot of research gone into that one. One of the main reasons I like this app, even though it's pricey, is because the word prediction has numbers beside it. And for somebody who's using an external keyboard, it means that they don't have to go between the keyboard and the screen to select the predicted word. They can do it all from the keyboard. Predictable is another app out there that is very widely known for anybody who's working in adult settings with degenerative conditions, for example. It's one I would really emphasize that would be an important one to have in your bank of apps. It's really nice. It has the keyboard, it has phrases prediction there, it has the nice ability to add in non-speech elements as well. Sorry, my mouse is disappearing on me. For example, throat clearing or laughing or things like that we automatically use to hold our place in a conversation, but that somebody who's non-verbal might not be able to do. So you can see emote down here on the right hand side of the screen, and what this does is it allows you to do things like adding in a cough. So it can give kind of a more natural sounding speech. This one also you can use Model Talker, so you can store your voice ahead of time. It also allows you to do things like under the Use tab over here on the right hand side, send your messages to third-party applications such as Facebook, email, Twitter, whatever the case may be. You can also see there you can print out things and also save it to your favorites if you're going to be using the phrase again and again. Handy Speech is a really nice one because it does handwriting recognition. So for those older individuals who might be familiar with technology, might not like the idea of keyboards and things like that, Handy Speech is quite a nice one because it can use handwriting. So for example, I'm just using my finger here, but you could use stylus, and I can... The only issue with this app is you have to be in a Wi-Fi area to get the text-to-speech element of it. So that's one thing just to be aware of. But it's a nice one, I think, for elderly people who've lost their voice for whatever reason and don't want a keyboard-based app. Just going to very briefly mention, that is kind of the end of what I'm going to talk about with Apple iOS apps. Any questions, you might throw them up in the chat window. I'm just realizing that the time is getting away on us. I just wanted to make just a point. There's a few apps out there that are worthwhile looking at for Android. So if somebody's got an Android tablet, one of the precautions about this, you might need to check what version of the Android OS that you have. There's lots of different variations, and I'm trying to remember what the most recent one is. And you just need to make sure that the app you're purchasing is suitable for that variation of Android on your device. I've given links here, so you'll be able to go off and click on them, and this was up in the previous presentation as well. You can click on the apps to go straight through to a page on information with them. So there's 2 pages of them there that you might go through. Just wanted to point out the last one there, the Nova Chat. It is an Android app, however you cannot download it from the Google Store yourself. You actually have to go through the company, Liberator in this case, and purchase it through them, so they're kind of keeping control of it a bit more. So even if you have your own Android tablet already, you cannot download this one, you have to go back through the company. AAC apps for Windows, there's a very limited variation out there. I've come across 3 and none of them are great, I'll be quite honest. very limited, not well designed, voice output is awful. Not a fan of those ones. But, however, if you're working on a Windows 8 Pro tablet, you can use some of the traditional devices out there, the software from them, as your basis. So, for example, the Grid 2 Mind Express, which is from TELUS, Tobii Communicator software, which is from Tobii. They're all very fully featured softwares that will go from that single message right up to complex grids and into text-based, and will also cover some of the non-AAC elements, so sending emails, text messages, environment controls, things like that as well. I'm just going to give you some useful links there as well. The AAC Centre blog is quite nice. That's a UK-based one, so often the apps that are available there are available to us. The Spectronics and Alls one is really good, but it's Australian-based, so you just need to take that into consideration. And ComQuick does actually cover Android apps as well. I don't know if there's any questions. Sorry, I'm just going to look at the side of the screen if that's come up. No. If anybody has any questions, you might post them up. I do realise it's just gone past 1 o'clock. If there is a question that comes back to you later, please do feel free to stick a message up on the forum as well, and I'll pick it up in the next day or two and reply to it. Thanks, Anthony. Just to draw your attention, Siobhan's going to just complete a short survey after this. And she's given the link there for SurveyMonkey. We'll also post that on the forum as well. So hopefully you got a better feel for AAC and apps today rather than what we did on the previous day. So hopefully you gained a better knowledge, you got to see some of the apps in action and get a better idea about what's out there. Thanks, Chandra.